Cloud server.
There you go. Boom.
There we go. So I'll do like, I mean, this will get edited anyway. So I'll do an introduction, and if Andre's listening, hi Andre, you're not allowed to use the video. Don't use the video. This is just a podcast.
He'll go for it.
Yeah, he will. Yeah, no. Welcome to the Leading Your International Schools podcast. My name's Barry Cooper, and I'm here with David Ardley. All the way at the moment, I think you're studying in Saudi Arabia.
I am in Riyadh, Barry. Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm still here.
Before we go any further, I just want to make a point about TIC, who are the company that sponsor this section for Leading Your International Schools. So recruitment, and I think we're going to talk about recruitment a little bit as well today, David, is a really difficult thing for school heads and school owners around the world. And TIC are a fantastic company who are really moving towards personalizing that approach. So I can't speak highly enough of TIC, and many thanks to them for sponsoring this segment and getting this out there to hopefully the teaching community. Excellent. So David, I mean, I could just go on and on, having kind of looked at your LinkedIn and what you produce and your ideas, and we've had interactions about kind of lots of different ideas. Do you want to kind of give a summary of where you've come from in terms of teaching career and where you're at the moment?
Thanks, Barry. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here, and thanks to Andre as well, who's doing, as you said, a great job behind the scenes with TIC. Yeah, I was born in UK, adopted, and I went at an early age overseas because my parents worked overseas, and I ended up going to an international school in Hong Kong, primary school, secondary school. So I grew up there, came back to the UK for university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an architect, but I wasn't very good at maths. I loved design and technology when I was at school. And so long story short, I found a degree which led me to continue with that. And that was a 4-year BEd honours degree in design and technology for secondary education in the UK, at Middlesex Poly at the time. And I wasn't even thinking about a career in teaching, but my teachers at my school really influenced me and what I enjoyed. So I ended up going to teaching, fell into the UK independent sector. They offered me accommodation. I was playing a bit of rugby and stuff, and got into that. And then I went down to Taunton School, then to Whitgift School up in London, then to Wellington College, my first head of department. Then I bounced out to France for 10 years with my first new school startup with Airbus. It was an international school down in Toulouse. And then from there back to UK, our daughters wanted A-levels, not IB, so we changed and went back there. I went via Stowe and Cranley. And then we finished there, and I got an offer out to Switzerland with Nord Anglia to do another new startup school, not as a lead on it, but just as a teacher of design technology and IT digital strategy. So we did that. And then 5 years then, and I moved up as an assistant head to Lyceum Alpinum, which is a school up in near St. Moritz in the Swiss-German part, and was there for a few years, and then got a call about would I like to be involved in being the founding principal of the school in Riyadh, which brand new school built. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And that's where I am now. So that's over about 38 years, Barry, I think. But design and technology is my degree. My passion is design education, but I like applying it in kind of the leadership and stuff, that type of thing.
Definitely, because we talked about design thinking as well. I mean, the first, I suppose, question is moving between, and because you speak French as well, don't you?
So yeah, a little bit. My wife is French and our home's in France, yeah.
So the moving between kind of a UK and Anglophone centre to a Francophone centre in Toulouse, and then in kind of French and German in Switzerland to Saudi. What's in terms of design, especially, because I think that's something that interests us both. In terms of design, in terms of the appreciation of design, how design is taught, what's the difference between those three spheres, between those three environments?
I think I was quite lucky because design and design education, and I'm not going to go down the CDT or design technology route or anything, but design education. I think the UK national curriculum and everything kind of were bastions of support for design education, and that filtered overseas to a lot of international schools that were doing a lot of work with design education, Barry. And I think a lot of the kind of hubs that then kind of split out came from UK-based practice in the end. What then led on to something, and I got involved with this as a gentleman who was my first A-level examiner down in the West Country, a gentleman called Michael Ive, who you all know better probably, or maybe not, as Johnny Ive's father, as in the Apple guy. So Mike Ive was the HMI for design and technology in the UK. but he was my A-level examiner at the time. And we struck a chord. He had a Saab, I had a Saab at the time. We just, we kind of hit it off. But that started then my passion for looking at design education from a bigger picture rather than just what was being done in schools. So I got involved. At the time I was teaching A-levels. I got involved in examining and things. And I went to a school which offered the IB, and I got involved with the IB in Cardiff. And at the time, the IB were looking at how they just started design and technology. But no, sorry, I've got to be careful. Design technology, no and. They call it DT. And there was a reason behind that. And it was coming from a science background. And I was not from a science background very much. So design education sits in the center of this bandwidth barrier where you've got science at one end, art at the other. And there's this kind of wavelength that comes across and hits design in the center. And that's when I triggered that in my mind, when it's misunderstood. It's not about color and things and whatever his name, Llewellyn, what's his name on UK television thing, talking about colors and things, which are important. But everyone gets this idea that design, isn't that a nice color? Isn't that a nice shape? And so I started to kind of dive into this. And then we went to America. It was Mike, myself, and a couple of others. And long story short, in America, they have this thing where if you're bright and seen as intellectually quite capable, you go down the maths and science route, i.e. classroom based, and off you go. But if you're good with your hands or struggle with the written examination type thing, you then go into what they call workshop and automotive, automotive mechanics type thing. And so they divorced quite quickly kids down this, because you couldn't do a written paper. You went down there and they're ferociously bright kids, great with their hands, intellectually very capable, who were suddenly stuffed down this corridor. And in America, they suddenly realized, oh, this is, and it was, I think Don Norman, I can't remember now, but they started to come together and say, well, why don't we have this STEM ideal where we have science, technology, maths, effectively engineering, and we harness these bright, capable kids who think with their hands and these academics, inverted commas, bring them together, and then we get this thing going. And that's the US-centric STEM thing started from that, and then it started to kind of snowball into the UK education sector. And this is probably about 12 years ago, I think, Barry, if I'm honest with you. And this is after we had the massive success of design education in the UK through the kind of late 80s, all through the 90s into the early noughties, where it was championed all over the place. It was core subject at Key Stage 3. I think at one point it was mooted as a Key Stage 4 thing as well, and it was just all went. And then suddenly it stopped. And the reason why it stopped, and where I started to think about it from an international context, because internationally design education was still championed in schools and supported by schools, was the need. There was a cost need for keeping design technology going in schools. There was a decline in the number of teachers coming through, and I did a 4-year BEd in design and technology. And then we got to a point over about, from when I finished to about 6 years thereafter, it was a 1 year in school on the training DipEd or a PGC or something. And I'm not knocking the training side, but the need to rapidly fire teachers who were qualified into one end, satisfy what was needed in schools in the other, completely kiboshed and kind of watered down the skill set that was needed for a design and technology teacher. So they thought, oh, well, the physics guy can do a little bit of, technology, and someone else. And so then we had the STEM thing.
I mean, with that, because this is something that you see in education a lot, isn't it? You see this kind of a brain drain. You see people moving off into different careers as things open out. I mean, you and I will probably could share horror stories about trying to find, great computer science teachers, great physics teachers.
Yeah.
But within that kind of move between design towards something like STEM, it seems to me that actually the need is for people with greater elements of training who can pull both ends of that spectrum together in terms of design than someone who's maybe being pulled from another subject to say, look, okay, you can give this a crack. Is that what's needed? I think is that what is needed in moving into this kind of STEM field? And is STEM as a collection of ideas, is it truly useful?
Oh, hey, hot potato here, Barry. I'll talk as David and I'll talk as the bigger picture. I think STEM was well-meaning, and it was a way to kind of get people involved in what we're seeing at the time. Is I hate the word technology, and I don't use that term lightly. I'm much more about anthropology than technology. And technology as a term is misunderstood. Technology is about gears and wheels and inclined planes, but it's used as a term, STEM, I think, as a cluster of subjects, as an extracurricular provision to allow teachers and kids that study in physics and maths and design and technology and art to come together to do collectively project work, I think is an absolutely brilliant ideal. And I think that's where schools are very bad, because we segregate these various subjects and seldom do we have an opportunity to come together and actually put all that good stuff in. And that's where STEM, I think, happened. But I saw it as an extracurricular activity. STEM's not a subject. It's, I said, it's a cluster of subjects of teachers from, I've seen IT, geographers, maths, physicists, coming together to try and deliver aspects of design education without any background, but they bring their exceptional qualities from their specific subject. But we've done STEM, I think, at the total, we completely cut out humanities, languages, and that aspect of the curriculum. Schools have jumped down resource-wise and everything else. And we've ignored what actually is at the essence of what good design education is about. It's about culture and anthropology. And you can't design a new product without having a historical stance and saying, well, look, what happened with that last, kind of version of it, and where did it go and where did it come from, and go forward. You can't look at you design a hedge cutter for the Japanese market where pink and purple are the correct colors. You can't use orange and green, the common ones that you see in the UK. And suddenly the psychology of it comes in. And this is where design, I think, impacts on everything. When people talk, Andy Homden was talking about it with the international schools, journal that he does, the design of schools, school design. It's an integral thing, but we cut it out. And my biggest concern with STEM is that schools and leaders have invested in it, and there's some great work that goes on. Design isn't even in the acronym to start with. They crammed art in later on and called it STEAM. Don't ask. But there's no DT in it, which ironically everything STEM does is what good schools who are doing design technology do and have done. It's been a creative core subject as an A level longer than economics DT. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, with the way we're moving in education at the moment, well, obviously AI is one of my big hobby horses. It's something that kind of occupies the mind of most people in education at some point during the day. With AI, are we then in a danger of having something that easily presents something that looks like design or looks like an idea or looks like a finished piece of something, but with that is ignoring exactly what you're talking about, is ignoring language and culture and anthropology. Are we in a point where actually we've got this weird shortcut that's kind of cropping up, which actually might be an impoverishing tool rather than something that adds to the school?
We've had chats, and I've been watching your posts and things on LinkedIn about this, Barry, and I'm the same. I think the AI should not. It's a tool that's come through. It's in the same way as when we moved from the quill and ink, and the monks got up in arms because some guy did a printing press, and therefore we moved that. It was just a technology that came in. We weren't forgetting the essence of writing, whether it was the quill, the printing press, the Bic Biro in the 50s, the Stardust and iPad in the 2000s. The actual skill of writing and doing it is the same, just the tools changed. AI is a tool, and I don't tie it with a subject myself. It's a cross blanket thing that all teachers should be aware of, not familiar with, aware of, and use it as they need to be. And I think the biggest problem with it, like, I'll give you the analogy, it's like Tesla and the self-driving cars. The EU until recently had no policy or legal kind of mantra in place to work out if there was an accident with a Tesla, who was responsible for that? Was it the guy running the satellite software up there? Was it Tesla who made the car? Was it the guys who the third-party guys who put the driving GPS thing in the car? Was it the guys who made the batteries that failed under? So you had all these variables, and no one would take ownership or accountability for it. AI is the same thing. How you use it and where it's going is really cool. And I answered to one of your posts, Barry, saying that I love AI, and like you, I'm feeling it. I'm trying to get my way around it and work out how I can best use it as a tool for me, for colleagues, and so on. What I can't see with AI at the moment, it's all very much in a two-dimensional sphere for me at the moment. It's about written work. It's about the written word, and that's where people seem to go. Chat GPT is about, you say this, type something in, you'll get a response, and then you can go with it. How that then transfers to kind of product design, industrial design, and the realization of 2D, 3D kind of maquettes, visualization. Take your passion, Japanese printing, for example. How does that dovetail into to that. It can from a historical aspect, I think, because you can pull stuff up, but I'm not sure yet how that then connects into a three-dimensional situation, and that's where design, I think, and it comes in. So I've seen a lot of graphics work with colleagues on LinkedIn and other places, where you put in something and you can produce a 3D visual of it, brand identities, logos, that type of thing. That's quite cool. But can I sit here with you and I can say on ChatGPT or other, 6,000
other options are available.
Are
yeah, it's
available.
Like the BBC.
And we say something, say, look, what I want is an ergonomically comfy chair, which is based on 50s design ethics. I want an Italian designer involved, and I like to be able to wash it easily with a hose. And then I get this thing that comes up, and then the machine over there then prints it for me in a kind of, that could be a fantastic development of AI moving forward to that. And I think we've got the technologies there, the technologies, not the technology, technologies.
I think the technology's there, but I think the key thing is what you were saying earlier about design, and is the human in the center of it. The anthropological element is something that is often missing. It's the person at one end of the machine saying, "This is what I want," but it's how well that then translates into a human experience, which I think is the really difficult thing. I suppose in terms of design in schools, which is so important, designing spaces for schools, and creating an environment in which human beings can be, I think is something that you just cannot leave to. I think from my sense, it's something that happens over a period of time. It's something that happens with lots of different stakeholders, from the architect to designers, but also that redesign that happens when you actually have children in the space, as they suddenly go, no, I'm not using it like that, I'm going to use it like this. From your experience being part of startups and in international spaces, how vital is design in creating these spaces, and how much do you have to redesign when you're like in charge of that environment?
Very good point. I've left my current employer. I left in January, just taking a breather for personal reasons. But when we set up that school, we had a company called Space Zero. Other companies were available. We're working with them, who've done a lot of work in schools. Because I had the design experience from my own kind of teaching and understanding, Barry, the thing for me is when people talk about designing schools, and when you're designing for kids, our school was an all-inclusive, non-selective school. So we had quite a spectrum. We had autistic and down kids at one side, gifted and talented at the other. Plus we had the cultural hit. We had Saudis, we've got Australians, Canadians, Brits, all in. The big thing with children is they make a decision on a classroom space as soon as they enter into it, and people think is it neat, arranged neatly or what have you. No, smell and kind of visual are the first two things that a kid makes a judgment on. Then it's texture, touch. Then it's hearing, the loudness, the decibels in the room. Those things. So same with adults. You walk into a house, you walk into a mate's house, and you smell freshly brewed coffee or fresh bread. It gives you a little bit of I want to venture more here. I like this. But if you go in and the guy or the girl has just, had a hard game of squash and they've left the kit in the corridor and it smells a bit of, BO, for want of a better term, or sweat, it taints your mindset immediately when you hit that. And that's the thing with schools. So from the moment the person steps out the car, the client in the car park, they're already making decisions about the school. How is the car park working? How is it? We'll talk about innovation later. They're already doing that. They haven't yet got to that third floor where you've got that immaculate teacher with the immaculate classroom and the all singing, all dancing digital technologies. They've already made a decision. Do I want to invest in this school or not with my child and what have you, from when they stepped out the car? And so coming back to your point, that the whole design of a school, when it's a new school and you've got the luxury of doing it from scratch, it's a bit easier to do, actually, because you can, you can do the paddock from the start. But if you've got an existing school building, and a lot of these beautiful school buildings, and we had it at Stowe going through, beautiful place.
Oh, Stowe's amazing. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous place. But when you start to dive in and want to do a little bit of innovative kind of renovation to a learning spaces, suddenly it becomes difficult, because you've got things in place that have been, systems underground, which have been there for sometimes hundreds of years. You just got things which to change is a very difficult thing to do, which is where I value those interior design people that come in. So this company we use, Space Zero, were very good because they worked around the world and they understood the palettes that you needed to. So I wasn't aware, even as a design teacher, how important the texture is to a young kid, because I'm I'm an old and ugly teacher of secondary kind of kids, you know. And so with young kids coming in, you notice they rub the seat, they rub the walls, they push against it. And that texture, the fabric that you've got, makes a massive difference to whether or not they want to stay in that classroom or not. Most people just think it's the color. Color helps, but the smell and the texture, massive. But to be able to do that in a place and get it going is one thing. Then you've got the supporting your teachers so they have for want of a better term, a flexible learning environment, Barry, where, you know, because we're still in this idiom, and it drives me nuts, where you stick a digital screen on the wall somewhere, an interactive board, and you get all the kids in there, you know, even with laptops sitting forward, the teacher stands at the front, and it's not everybody, but I'm just going, and they say, oh, we've got a whiteboard, isn't that great? So when the teacher turns their back, of course the kids are on their Netflix or on their Facebook or whatever it is, because you can't see the screens. And then the teacher wonders why the kids are turning around looking at the back of the classroom, because the teacher's got all the good stuff hanging at the back of the classroom. So the kids are looking for the influence. They've got the digital board there, and the whole thing, the whole management of a learning space is crazy. And again, the analogy, just briefly for design, is like hospitals. When you're going on a gurney in a hospital, you're lying flat looking up at a white ceiling, and hospitals put all the lovely colors and things at waist height downwards. But most of your guys and girls coming in never see that. All they see is fluorescent.
I had a dentist in China once who had a TV on the ceiling.
There you go.
And so for kids who are in there, then the cartoons will go on, and of course they're back looking, and it was so simple. But what the hell is that doing? Oh, I get it. And it's just right there, and the experience becomes one that is just completely transformed from the I don't want my teeth drilled to, oh, okay, it's an episode of The Simpsons. Ow, that hurts a bit. So I mean, in terms of the design of schools, I mean, something we experienced here was having to redesign. So not shifting walls and, you know, not kind of remaking spaces in that sense, but rather the use of spaces. You sit around the table and then you design the school. You say, this is how we're going to do it. These are our processes. This is everything else. And the kids decide, no, we're not doing it that way. Is that something that you've had, especially from kind of the younger end, where you've had to say, okay, this is not working. Let's flip it. Let's change it. And how does that process work?
A very good question, Barry. A few schools ago, we had an architect come in to do a sixth form centre, a sixth form design, you know, sixth form centre for sixth form, bizarrely. So they did their designs and everything. And then we put it to the kids, we put it to the students. Sorry, not kids, that's it. We put it to the students. And they looked at it and kind of laughed, cried, and everything else. And so what's wrong with this? And I think the problem when you have school design coming into place is that you seldom ask the people working in it. So the kids brought up ideas and thoughts about how they use the space, how they move around, what they wanted, which was a far cry from the 35 to 50-year-old teachers and the architect who were doing the vision, because they hadn't come at it from an open-minded kids stage. We needed to engage them earlier on. It worked in the end. And it's not just about furniture and making it flexible. It was about lighting and where the windows should be and what the shape and nature of the environment to how they wanted to study, because it was at the time we thought kids sit at a study corral and they want the big wings on it, so they didn't want that. They actually wanted like comfy sofas with a coffee table, so they sit there with their tech and whatever, and they could shoot the breeze like a Google Office. Let's be honest, it's like what happens in a lot of these places, but at kids level. And then you had to then fight with the leadership, because they thought, well, you can't have this. Parents are going to come in and see our children lounging around the place. Well, no, that's not the intent. But this is where we now got to try and work together to find a happy medium with this.
Well, that's an interesting anthropological point as well, isn't it? Is not just, you know, a space in which it can be used in a way that's right for the kids, because this is, I mean, we had that here, and actually we had to redesign a section that basically provided what you're talking about, is more space where it's not, you know, traditional at a table and so on. But getting people on side with the purpose of the design and getting them to understand how that's being used is sometimes quite difficult when you're coming at it from, you know, you've got a certain pair of glasses on, a certain pair of lenses. You know, like, this is how I see the world. Students should be sat at desks. Well, not always.
No, it's true. And I forget what it was, but there was I've got it here somewhere. There was a a study done about innovation in different sectors, and schools have been perceived always as quite behind the curve in terms of innovation and strategy. Actually, the reality was that they're actually very innovative in mindset, but putting it into place then starts to hit hurdles, be it financial, be it so on and so forth. And the governance that schools bring into play, that they start to impact upon the freedom to be able to do what you want. It's not about money, Barry. And money is important sometimes, of course it is, but it's not always about money. It's about mindset. And coming back to the sixth form centre, the kids get it. It's the adults that have got the blinkers and the convergency, because they've come through, and they're kind of dogs of habit, and so they do what they're comfortable with, and that's where architects are the same. In Toulouse, when we did the school, there's a beautiful building, all the rest of it, and all one side was completely glazed, floor to ceiling. But when the school started, and practically with the Toulouse heat, everyone was sweating to bits, even though you had the best air conditioning system in the world. So then we had to add in at cost kind of these wings, foils, which would basically provide shade to the glass as you came in. But the architect didn't see that. Oh, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful. And so working with adults is the best and the worst thing in the world. Kids are brilliant because they're so open-minded, and younger kids, they've got no baggage. They'll tell you as it is. This chair is horrible. Well, why is that? And you go, oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And so I love that. And that's where I think design in schools can be. We get more agency if we listen to our kids more, I think, because sometimes we give them a disservice. We think that they haven't got something to bring to the party, when in fact they have. Yes, we have to rarefy it and sieve it and bring it down from kind of, Willy Wonka and Harry Potter down to a genuine kind of reasonable solution.
Yeah.
But starting with that kind of crazy ape stuff and the future forging, and then getting it down, I think it's much better than starting from a really staid kind of platform and then try to build it up.
But is this how we should think when we think about design then? Is there a philosophy that perhaps we're missing when we try to think about a school space, or even a system design?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we do. I think, as I said, design as a subject is misunderstood, and I won't go down that one now. But you're right. I think it is a mindset, and you've got to. I think most people don't see design as I said, as an anthropological hit, because at the end of the day, you're designing products and systems which improve the quality of humankind in terms of what they do and how they do it. And there's a luxury to that, and there's a necessity to that. You can have a luxury watch, you can have a luxury car. Someone needs to get to A to B, someone needs to tell the time. And in between, there's a complete kind of areas studied, need, want, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But I think that inherently, Barry, is it. And how we design curriculums in schools, I think, needs a massive revisit. How design education has kind of been watered down. That's, as I said earlier, the STEM thing came on because everyone thinks you need coding and machines and technology, inverted commas. Technology is not a driver for educational change. It's a tool that supports certain things. If we get one of those James Bond scenarios tomorrow where we've got a villain in the world who cuts off all our electricity supply, we will still teach, we will still deliver, we will still do what we need to do. We don't need the technology to do that. The tools are great, but there's other things. It's a mindset. And that's where I think your point is coming to the fore now. I think we need to, especially with AI, we run the gauntlet of taking away people's ability to think. And also, I remember when Google came into play, people thought Google was gospel, in the same way as Wikipedia was gospel. I could go in and say Barry Cooper's just been knighted and is now the king of Monaco or something, and it will probably stand there for an hour. And you'll have kids say, hey, good effort, Barry.
Congratulations, sir. Yeah, it's when are you moving, and can we have tickets to the casino?
Yeah, exactly.
So is this then, I mean, moving on to things like innovation within schools then, or innovation within education? I mean, you said, education needs to be, restructured. We need to think about it in different ways. I mean, I suppose there's lots of things to unpick with things like innovation. How far are we innovative, and how far is that innovation kind of suppressed by the natural conservatism of maybe government, of stakeholders, of CEOs, of school owners who are looking at the framework as it has been, which has been perfectly successful, So what is it we need to do to be more innovative, or what are the innovations that we're missing?
I think the first thing, Barry, I think is to clarify the difference between innovation and reform, because schools get hit by a lot of reform. Educational reform is around, we're going to have Spanish and design and technology to the end of Key Stage 3. That's a mandate. Here we go. Off you go and deliver. That's not innovation. That's something you just got to follow. And that's a reform thing that happens. And all of our schools and all our countries and places are hit with areas of reform at different times,
Mm.
and that's one thing. But from an innovation standpoint, I think it can be, to be innovative doesn't need money or technology. It just needs you to think things in a different way and how you do things. Coming back to what I said earlier about a car park, I remember in one school where the innovative thought process allowed us to change the way the flow of the car park worked. So we avoided the build-up of parents stopping, not just to drop the kids, but stopping and kissing and cuddling and I love you too, Dad, and what are you doing later? I'll pick you up. And so that drop-off point became a kind of 2-minute love you, miss you moment before the car moved on, in which case you then so we had to, my point is, the innovating change to that was how we did the flow of those cars coming in and out of that space. It can be as simple as that. Other innovations can be, based on design, on bathroom layout or design, or it could be, staff room positions. You have a staff room, but no, you could have breakout points around the school where staff have to get 10 minutes to get to that staff room to receive the head's talk or thing, and then get back. They've lost 20 minutes of their 25-minute break. So how could you do it? So you can. Again, I've been in a school where we had breakouts where staff within faculty to send could have a breakout to a company space, and then we had the chat was video linked, so the staff could get to the main hub were great, but those who couldn't, and it wasn't a laziness, it wasn't, oh, we're not going to bother because we can see it on here, but then you still had the communication going on. It took 10 minutes out, then they could have a genuine 15 minutes of chat, shoot the breeze, grab a coffee, have a wee, whatever it might be, without. So an innovative approach to that type of thing.
Yeah.
The gauntlet that you run, using that word again, an analogy was given to me a while ago. Do you remember Dyson when they first did the, what they called it, the air blades, the hand drying devices, Barry? They were prototyped in with various hoteliers in high-end hotels in London and other places in Europe. And at the time, a lot of those hoteliers rejected the idea because they didn't want their hotels to be seen as the fancy hotel with these gimmicky hair dryers. What's wrong with the paper towel and so on and so forth. And that's a sense, I think, of what holds back innovation in schools, because as a headmaster, as a principal, as a lead in a school, if you introduce something which is innovative, you've got managing your stakeholders, managing your parents' perception to that. Why are you wasting our money on something which is a little bit out there? As much as you've got your governors and your boards to say, oh, well, are they going to talk about us in a bad way? Are they going to say that we're doing something a bit out there and therefore we're going to lose gravitas with what you do? Yeah, but you've got to manage it well. So any innovation, I think, schools are often restricted on having innovative practice because of the governance that they have from above on things, I think. And you've got to, as a leader in a school, you need to learn how to market an innovation effectively, having done your diligence so that you know that it's going to be, this is the right thing. The guys and girls in my team get it. The kids can see the benefit coming through. Launch it in. How you manage that process, I think, is why most schools fail with innovative practice, because it's seen as being either rebellious or a bit too far out there. It can be a no uniform policy.
Yeah. I mean, we don't. I mean, we have a uniform policy, but it's please make sure you're dressed.
It's a dress code, exactly.
Yeah, it's just like make sure you're dressed. Yeah. I mean, we actually we do have a policy, but it's one of those things where we have something in place because we just want to make sure that there's a line. So it's simple stuff. But I mean, everything you're talking about there is it's kind of this framework of where the objections are. It seems to me that one of the key elements towards moving those objections on and actually being able to be innovative is the communication. So the ability to define, and this comes back, I think, to design as well, and that design process and design thinking, the ability to define an issue and then define a potential solution and then put it into place and then review it and then kind of, go from there. Is that kind of something that then comes into your thinking as a school principal, kind of design thinking in terms of both the human aspect of people and policies and then also the physical side?
A very good point. Yeah, this was my first principal role. And one of the things that I brought for myself into play was, you call it old school, but design is a cyclic activity. So I start with a kind of, it's a circular process for me. And I tried to start it as much as with the kind of, the structure of the leadership team, because it's having them in a circle means no one has, it's like sitting around a table. There's no head of table. There's parity in terms of what you bring to the game. And I may be in the middle because I've got to be accountable for making a decision. Okay, having seen all this, this is where we're going with this. Some will like it, some won't, but we've listened, we talked, we're going to go ahead. But I think that circular thing is where the design thinking comes into it. I'm not a fan, as well as everyone talks about, oh, you've got to think outside the box. Well, actually, you've got to think inside the box sometimes. You've really got to go down and be quite discreet and focused on what you're thinking about. Thinking outside of the box is a term I don't like. I like the idea of kind of divergent thought process, thinking about something in a different way, coming at it from a different perspective. And I've even done it with staff, as well. Getting staff to lie down on the floor when you ask them a question, it really changes the way in which they answer the question. Don't ask me why. I'm not going into psychology of it. When I've done some talks about design thinking and I've asked, a load of very bright, capable people in a room to think, to sketch with a pen and paper, give them all a pen and paper, sketch a box, and if your box matches my box, I'll give you all a Mars bar, or an apple, whatever's the healthy option. That's great. And they all come up and they produce a cube, and I said, well, I didn't say draw a cube. Why did you say that? So then I get out my Smarties tube and I get out my Toblerone box, and I say, box is just a container. But schools have battered out of you. Schools have done this, battered out of you, and made you think that a box is a cube. And so if you've got that fundamental level, even with kids and these ferociously academic kind of adults, if they're thinking like that, what change are you going to get when you say, well, why don't we sit down and look at how we might do the curriculum differently? Why do we run it 40-minute things? And why do we all have maths and sciences there and art and languages here? What about if languages went into biology, or we had design with economics, which actually is the entrepreneurship thing works? But just to change, and why don't we do it as a project base? Let's get rid of periods and have a whole morning working on a project let's sort out Mr. Cooper's office environment. Let's look at that as a team. Boom. And get your scientists and your linguists and your sports guys and girls and everyone in on it, and all the kids in their care. You'll come up with some phenomenal things, but it's that mindset which stops us. It's that box mentality. Oh, I don't know. Why would you do that? Well, because we've done this for 200 years and clearly it's not working. Our core subjects, why are maths and science core? I know they're valuable, Barry, don't misunderstand me, but I think geography, especially nowadays with the way in which children, dare I say, are not as culturally aware as they used to be, because travel has subsided to a bit, because it's now all online. You can go on and look at, your Discovery this, and you get, oh yeah, I'm culturally aware because I saw this great documentary on it. Well, you know what? It's not quite the same as actually going and visiting. But we have that culture change in schools, I think, coming back to your point. If we can get people to be more open-minded and less worried about the repercussions, i.e., oh, what will people think about this, rather than, yeah, let's have a go. For me, it's like a game of rugby, Barry. You've got a gain line. You've done a couple of moves. You've come back. You've gone past the gain line. Good effort. If you come back to the gain line, all right, you're no worse off than where you were. If you come back to the gain line, okay, we made a mistake there. But if you take that analogy for sport, I think, and put it into a school's context, especially in leadership, stop worrying about the repercussions. Look at the positives we're going to get from this.
Yeah.
Or not. We might still be the same place, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, you have to try. You have to move it forward. You have to try new things in order to create potential victories for students. But what you're talking about though, I think is really interesting. Is that concept of the box? Draw a box. I play the game, the Wittgenstein's beetle game with students, and I ask them, think of a beetle in a box. And of course, it's you start to kind of move it forward, and then they say, "What do you mean by beetle?" Okay, and the insects come up, and then some wag will go, "What about a VW Beetle?" It's like fantastic, and then someone else will go, "What about the Beatles?" It's like brilliant. So it starts to become open, starts to become bigger, and starts to become something where they can really explore and move past the rules that maybe we put in place for them. I mean, language obviously has a set of rules, but the way in which we're teaching language has a set of rules. So it seems to me that design or design thinking is going to take as much value from the teaching of literature and the teaching of history and the teaching of religious studies and the teaching of ethics as it's going to take from art and from creation and engineering. I mean, how do you bring it all together, though? How do you then, because everything we have, I mean, I'm looking around my room, every single thing here at some point has been touched by a designer, from the table, from the pen, everything. So how do you bring this together in a school?
Totally. I mean, I start off with when I get kids coming into design at kind of IGCSE or A level, unless it's grown out the ground or popped out a human or an animal, someone has sat down with a pen and paper, pencil, something, and sketched an idea. That's where it started. I was watching Netflix, as I do, the other day, and there's a great series called the Blacklist. Anyway, it's on there, and one of the guys, one of the guys, and that was said something which triggered my mind. He said that it was about sport and how this leader of a sports company was basically influencing the athletes in his care by drugging them so they ran better in the shoes that he was providing, so he had better market share. That was the story. But the comment was, sport, art, and design had been in schools 7,000 years before anyone started to teach kids to write. And I thought, no, that can't be right. So I went and had a look. And it's true. Sport, competition, art, creation, hands, paint, was actually 7,000 years in being, way before we decided to sit kids down and teach them how to write or do maths. That kind of blew my mind. That was only a few days ago. And I thought, well, hang on a second then. So why have we suddenly got these core subjects going on when this goes on? And my point, you say, I'm good at going off on this, sorry, Barry, was that sketching is the most widely understood and used language in the world. The sketch, you can sketch them. If you don't have the same language as somebody else spoken, you can do a little arrow or a little figure, show them, you've got it. That's the enormity of a well-done sketch, and a well-honed sketch can convey an idea to everybody in a room, irrespective of what language or culture they've come from. They can look at it, it's a visual. Okay, I can see where you're going. Whether they like it or not, it's not the point, but they can get an idea. And that, for me, is how important design is to this. The way in which, I'm not trying to say here that design should be, I think design should be a core subject if you want to have. I don't like core subjects, I like parity. But it should have time in the curriculum. I don't think technology should have time in the curriculum, because the technology that's delivered in physics is different to the technologies that you use in the classroom. It should be a tool there to support. Coding. I mean, most coding now at basic level, computers have got their own kind of algorithms going. You need people to code, but the base level now, not really. As soon as computers have emotive kind of responsibility, we're not needed anyway. It's the next ice age. Bye-bye, humankind. They'll crack on. We don't need us. So let's, we don't have to go too far down that.
Insert doomsday scenario here. But what you're talking about then is design as a language, no?
Yeah, it is. It's exactly that. It's a language, because everyone makes a judgment call. You look in your office, you sit down. Well, that's not very comfortable. Or why is that not working? Why is that not coming off that lid? Why is my plate sliding on my tray in the cafeteria? Why is my fork just sit? It's all material science, basic. Something a bit more grippy, coefficient of friction, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's around everywhere.
I mean, is this something that maybe kind of expanding it outwards? You're looking at schools and how they're designed. You're looking at curriculum, how they're designed. Because this is, I mean, a school, what we do is we follow the path of least resistance, which is, okay, we use language, we use mathematics, we use a building, we use whiteboards. Do we need to not necessarily extend what we're teaching, but extend our idea of what communication actually is, or a language actually is? As you were saying, 7,000 years ago, this is how people are communicating. They are, they're having competition. They are playing games with one another. They are creating.
They're communicating with each other. Exactly. They are. I mean, I think fundamentally, we're creatures of habit, I think, in education, but in many sectors, I think it's not just education. It's in banking. It's in other areas too, Barry. We're creatures of habit. And I think as soon as you try to kind of open the envelope a little bit and push a little bit and do it, suggest another way of doing it, because you've seen how that could be so much more improved in terms of end result, I know, for the people working within, cost, whatever it might be. But putting your head, I don't know, like me, I'm sure you've been in meetings, right? I like to listen to understand rather than listen to reply. And so I tend to stay quiet in meetings a lot and then try to come in. But a lot of people you can see are afraid of talking up because they don't want to be seen as putting their head above the parapet. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing.
Oh yeah.
Kids don't have that. Students are far more passionate about putting their points of view across and what have you. And I think the reason why adults don't do it, especially in a school situation, especially in those leadership meetings where you sit, you wait for someone to go, and then the sluice gates open and everyone starts to go. Because there's fear of comeback. You don't want to be seen to put an idea out, which is then knocked back, and you think, oh, you know, and you get that body language where you go down. Being knocked back is, everyone talks about it. You see the buzz things. Oh yeah, failure is great. No, failure is not good. Failure is, it's not great to fail.
But failure sucks. Yeah. But
yeah,
you can learn from it. You can absolutely
how
learn
you
from it.
evaluate the failure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in design, for example, if you design and make a chair, you get someone to sit on it, it collapses. It's a really easy thing to assess and evaluate then. Look, blimey, that wasn't made, you can see. Something that's successful is much more different to evaluate. But failure is not a good thing. And when people talk about it, I think it's twist, as you quite correctly say. How you then evaluate where you go after that failure is what's the most important thing. It's not good to fail. We don't want failure because we tell kids all the time, oh, you failed your exam. Tough kid. And then it all goes to bit. It's not good. But how you then evaluate and progress as a consequence of moving forward, having learned what you did, that's a design process. Because you constantly fail in the design process because it's an iterative process. You maquette, you prototype, you put it on paper, you put it to CAD, you make, you test, didn't work, or it worked, but I can see where we can make it more efficient or better. We go back to it and we continue that cycle. That's what we need to do in schools. And it's a bit like a website. It's organic. You never, sir, I finished my website. No, you haven't. It's organic. It keeps on going. It will change and develop as you go. And the same within schools. No school is ever done or finished. No process or curriculum is done. It will constantly go forward. But we need to change some of those parameters, which are either stopping us from failing because they're safe, or they're restrictive and not allowing us to kind of go further because we're worried about repercussions, be it from board, people, comment. It's a really interesting dynamic there, Barry, I think. And I think it hamstrings the development of many schools. And I think it hamstrings education. And I think the reason why we're still stuck in this way, and bless him, Sir Ken Robinson, with everything he talked about, and creativity in schools, with everything that went on, I did something in my blog about it. We're 16 years, 17 years later, nothing's changed. No one listened. Everyone thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, the whole TED talk, 35, 40, 50 million views. But there's been no one actually saying, oh, you know what, let's try that. There's been no change.
It's I think the change happens in the small moments, isn't it? The overriding structure is something that, yeah, it's in that moment, in that interaction between teacher and student, between colleagues, where you go, hang on, let's just try it this way.
Yeah.
But it's being able to knock down the edifice of education and say, actually, no, this needs wholesale root and stem review and change is something that I think governments or boards just find too terrifying. So I think we'll get there. I have hope and I have faith, but I think it's probably going to take us more than 16 years. It's going to take a good few generations to move that needle, as long as that needle is something that needs to be shifted. But I think with AI, we've got this sort of Damocles now hanging over us, which is actually, you know what, this is a thing we're kind of in a race with now, because this is the tool that's going to save everything, or the tool that's going to take away creativity. And actually what we now need to do is we need to deal with this. And I think Sir Ken Robinson and what he's talking about in creativity, or if you read The Element, for example, that's where actually the strength of comes in a classroom. That's where the strength comes in a group of educators. And if that gets harnessed, I think we're on the right track.
I think we are, and that's the thing. We have pockets of excellence going on in all these schools around the world, Barry, where there is really good innovative practice and stuff going on. But the biggest picture is always hit by the fact that, unfortunately, we're in the worst profession you could ever be in, because everyone is a specialist, because everyone went to school. Every parent went to school. When I was at school, it was this. When I was at school, we did that. Why is my son not doing that? Because when I was at school, you think, oh, here we go.
Yeah,
And that's
where's his Latin vocab? This is a home ec class, sir. Please calm down. Yeah,
I mean, it's true. If I'm on a surgery table having something done on my tummy, I'm not going to say, hey, hang on a second, doc. I reckon you need to go this way. Let me have a look here and let's see what have a pod there. Because I think no, but everyone's a specialist, and so to get innovation, you got two ends. I think there are many people in the profession who are afraid of change because of the ramifications that come with that. We're also driven by, especially, not exclusively, Barry, but in fee-paying schools and the growth in the international market, as you and I both know very well. There is a fear as well that if parents are paying for something, sadly, I think, I love the IB and everything and A-levels, everything goes, but the idea is I'm paying for this kid to get X grades so they can bounce to that university and go. And if you do anything which might be seen as innovative, which might be at the detriment to that progress of that child, in my mind as a parent, I'm going to flag that up. So you've got that kind of dynamic going on too. Coming back to the point about the air blade drives, what do you do to change things? I think exams are a horrible thing. I'd much rather, and this is with AI, I think it's a discussion you and I had on LinkedIn. For me, AI is brilliant insofar as if a kid does his essay and use AI, fine. Let's have a viva voce. Let's have a verbal 15 minutes. Well, I've got the essay that the kid's written here. Kid stands there. Tell me about what you've written. Now, live, FaceTime, FaceMail, talk to me. Because then I'll know whether or not you've actually got any involvement in this and understanding, or you've just used AI and ChatGPT and you haven't got a clue. You think you've got a great essay. That's where I think our method of assessment is going to come in. But if you've got 2,000 kids in your cohort at post-16 education, and you've got to then sit down and go through each of them doing between, 5 and 8 subjects and all the other stuff that goes with it, Barry, that's a nightmare scenario waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But we need to.
It comes back to what you were saying about design education and about
But to happen, it must, because you need to be fair to the kids. But I think we're going to need to change the way in which we assess children and what they've learned from our subject areas, especially with AI. I think we're going to have to look very carefully and quickly at how we assess that, with curriculum providers. You're not sticking papers in a piece of plastic and sending it off anymore. In the same way, we need to look carefully at how we sift through CVs using artificial intelligence. I think that is flagging up some quite key issues where good people are being missed. And so,
absolutely. I mean, I'm still analog with that. I read all the CVs, go through every single one, because otherwise you miss it. You just doing keyword searches or using some other kind of data kind of search to find things. And this is the same thing that happens with when you're looking at students' work. It's you have to go back and you're being that entrepreneurial kind of design thinking that's dig down into the problem, that's dig down into what we've got in front of us and see exactly what's going on, and from there you can start to build. I'm seeing on our time we're coming up on the hour, and
wow.
it's been amazing talking
to
you, David. What I'd really like to do is just before we kind of sign off is just 3 ideas of 3 things that people listening could read, go watch, go see, or think about that would get them a better sense of design thinking, and how to, or rather what we were talking about earlier, how perhaps they can think when they think about design. Are there maybe one book, one exhibition or artist, one film that you'd recommend? What would you point me to if I wanted to know more and get into design a little bit further?
There was a series on Netflix, Barry, and I feel terrible now because I can't remember the name of it, but it was a series of 6 programs which followed, it wasn't called Abstract, or was it called Abstract? It might have been. It followed 6 different people and different things: a photographer, a product designer who worked for Nike, a shoe designer, I'm an artist, but they're all product industrial designers. A brilliant series, really, really good. I think it was called Abstract, the series, and it was very good. I just got this the other day, and I just read this one, John Cleese. It's called his book on creativity, A Short and Cheerful Guide. And it is a short and cheerful guide on creativity. And the thing about it, he says here, his back cover, there's a myth that creativity is something you have to be born with. This isn't the case. Anyone can be creative. And John Cleese was trained as a lawyer, and I went to Oxbridge, but he trained as a lawyer, and did all the lovely things. I love Monty Python and stuff, but he did that. But his analytical mind, his creative mind, he felt that he wasn't creative because he was too analytical, because he's been taught his mindset to be a lawyer. But no, the best lawyers are the most creative ones. The ones that have to think on their feet and do what you need to do. They are the best ones. And the last thing I think for me, it's listen to understand. One of the biggest problems I think that people face, not just within design education, but within education and elsewhere too, is they listen to people so they can get a good reply in, rather than listening to actually genuinely understand what it is that's coming their way and understand that person and put yourself in their shoes and where they're coming from. For design, it's easy. If you've got a client and they're saying, I want this and I want you to do that and that, you've got an idea and you can work with them to do that. But if someone is talking to you, let's take an educational context, a teacher's come to see you about something that happened in their classroom, you need to listen to understand, so you can try and put yourself in their shoes to appreciate why this has come to a head as it has, so you can then give them some advice, rather than just reply and say, well, you should have done that type of thing. So listen to understand, John Cleese, the Netflix series. I'll pop you some stuff.
It's called Abstract. Yeah.
It is Abstract. Well done.
Yeah, I think it's called Abstract. It's something like the art of design.
Yeah, and it's about a series.
I think I watched the one about the shoes.
Yeah, that's right. And he's a great story, because again, I forgot his name, but he was an athlete himself who broke his ankle quite badly, and then ended up designing products for Nike and did the Nike Air Jordan got the first endorsement of Michael Jordan. But the whole process, that whole series, and he's a surfboard and split windscreen Volkswagen van guy, and and wears he's just a cool dude, but those type of things. Yeah, there you go. And anything else I think of, I'll pop through to you.
Fantastic. I mean, what we'll do is we'll put this out on various social media, and so alongside it, we can put more ideas about what you should watch. David, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I mean, this could have gone on for another hour, but
I know, and I'm sorry, and I talk too much as well, Barry.
No, not at all. I much prefer listening than otherwise. I'm talking, and I can't stand, as my students will tell you, I get bored by the sound of my own voice, so I end up just tailing off. It's like, no, we're done. Someone else take over. But it's been really amazing. I wanted to pick your brains more about AI, and I think there's much more there to unpick. So
we'll do another one. But thank you, Barry.
Definitely, yeah. No, definitely we must. So David, thank you so much. Remember, we're sponsored by TIC. Do follow Leading Your International Schools online. Do, if you get a chance, connect with David on LinkedIn and other social medias. You're always posting something interesting. So and David is one of these people I love on social media, who was a serial reposter. So when you see another idea, you just fling it out into the ether. And it's a fantastic thing to see, and you get to see so much more from people who do that. So David, thank you very much. And from me and from David, goodbye.
Thank you, Barry. It's been a pleasure, mate. I'll catch up again soon. Brilliant. Thank you.
Bye.